This one?
Fine.
Oh, that's good. Hi, everybody. Hello. It's great to see you.
Still with us.
Still with us.
3:30 in the afternoon. We just need to keep you awake as you digest your lunch. Cleo, would you like to give us a perspective just about Cleo McCormack version 1, what your role is, and then I'll do the same and we'll get going.
Brilliant. Great to see so many familiar faces in the audience. So I'm Cleo. I'm Global Head of Organisational Development at Version 1. Version 1 is a digital transformation company, and org dev means different things in different organisations. Sometimes it's in the HR function, sometimes it's combined with L&D. So the concept of organisation development for me and the span of my role encompasses learning and development, change management, comms, engagement, health and well-being and capability. And most recently, a year ago, our mission to become fully AI native at Version 1. And so that would be everything to do with people skills and comms.
That's a broad portfolio of responsibilities. That's amazing. And the other thing that I learned about version 1, I know version 1 from my time at Microsoft, didn't realize there was 3,500 people in there. It's an incredible size of organization. So hi everyone, I'm Patrick Ward. I'm the founder of Itheria Partners. We're a consulting company. We help organizations take on technologies like AI and digital and data science. And we do so through the lens of, I guess, business strategy analysis. We work with an organization to understand their strategy, then we go very deep in terms of how these capabilities can help accelerate the realization of that strategy. I'm also a part-time lecturer in UCD and Smurfit Business School in this same kind of area of strategy meets AI. And I'm also the European Director of the Edge AI Foundation. Edge AI is this whole area of running your AI on the devices that surround us, the cars, the trains, the automobiles, etc. So, Cleo, we're here to talk about the rapidly changing landscape of organizational development, and I think you could probably stick on the end of that title, in this crazy age of AI. As I go out to work with organizations, with clients, as I prepare for a lecture, one of the biggest challenges I have is keeping on top of this stuff. It's model context protocol this week, it's reasoning the following week, it's agents the following week. This is tough stuff to keep on top of. I can only imagine the scale of challenge that represents for an organization of 3,500 people. Can you tell me a little bit about the evolving role of our leadership and the evolving role of OD in that context?
That's a brilliant question, but I might add a further complexity, if you don't mind. So it is a challenge for OD, L&D, HR, and for a lot of the people in the room. But there is one other thing that we need to think about, which is the fact that when it comes to AI, we are fundamentally working at an identity level with people. People's job titles and their sense of purpose is tied into their job description and who am I without my tasks. So when we are asking people to embrace AI, we are fundamentally changing the psychological contract that we have with employees in the business. And we need to be really mindful of that. And there's one other thing as well, is David Rock's work. He talks about when we experience threat, there's 5 parts of our brain that light up. And the first one is status. What does this mean for me? Am I pecking order? Certainty. Can you give me predictability about my future, my ability to earn money? Autonomy. Do I get a say in this? You know, relatedness, fairness, and all of these things need to be addressed by leaders, by OD supporting around change management. So that's one component which we might pick apart as we go on.
Sure.
We've had great chats before this. And the other one then as well for me is it's all about efficiency and it's about a tool. And I was in the UK last week and I met a leader and he was like, oh, we've been given Copilot licenses. Sound familiar? And we've been asked to be more efficient. And like, it's great for the emails and the teams love it or whatever, but like, God, IT are just telling us we need to use this. And I was like, okay. I was like, what's the company's mission? What are you trying to do? And he was like, well, we're here to make the public service better and to improve efficiencies and serve the public. And I said, that's where we need to start. So where are the bottlenecks? where are the areas that, God, if I had more time, we'd focus on that. That's where we need to start. So what's happening is that we're, again, the autonomy piece, being told to use this, but we're missing a component.
And I detect, it sounds like, from what you're saying, that was probably a tool rolled out, chosen by and rolled out by the IT department. No disrespect to IT,
Absolutely
super
not.
important stakeholder.
Yeah.
But these things have got to be led by the business. And as you say, tied to the organizational strategy, we need to be clear about the business problem that we're seeking to solve. Really clear, a really important point. And I guess the other point that you made at the outset was, you as an organization made a conscious decision to kind of go all in on AI a year ago. So we've listened to a lot of perspectives throughout today that kind of talk about this, radical change that's underway and that we need to prepare. That preparation has been underway in version 1 for a year. Can you talk us through where you started, how you set that up, and how far you've got with that and how that has been?
Brilliant. And again, we are all in this together. So there are parts where we're ahead and there's parts where we're behind. And I was chatting to, I think she's CPO of Salesforce, and they're way ahead in some areas. And she was like, oh, actually, we're not doing this. So it's kind of like 3 steps forward and a little bit back. So a year ago, our CTO and Brad Mallard and the managing director, 2/3 of the organisation, came to me and said, we want to become fully AI native. And we'd like you to help, and we'd like you to drive people skills and comms. And I said, for what purpose? What's the why? And they said, well, it's an imperative. And I said, why is it an imperative? And they said, because we need to be 3 steps ahead so we can shepherd and be a strategic advisor for our customers. So our consultants are able to guide people on this paradigm shift. So we need to have walked the walk and gone through the journey. That makes sense. So start with why. So the first thing we did was defined our mission. So what is our mission? We want all of our consultants to be augmented with intelligence on tap so that they can spend more time with the customers, not to be replaced by AI, and that all of our teams are getting to do what we love, which is to transform with intelligence by taking away some of the heavy, admin-heavy parts of the role. So we needed to be really clear in the mission and vision, and then it was about making sure that we applied a change management approach. So, creating awareness of what was happening, and then building capability from the ground up with AI fundamentals 1, 2, and 3. And actually, Alison, our instructional designer, is in the room. And that was raising the literacy and meeting people where they were at. So we did a comprehensive plan on how we were going to get there. Now, it wasn't all easy. So, there was hurdles along the way. But what we did get right was making sure that we started with why. And as you guys all know in the room, once you have a why, you have a how and a what.
Okay, fantastic. And you talk about redeveloping the mission there. Are we talking about a new mission for your organisation?
That's a really good point. I was kind of hoping we would tie it in together, but we've a new CEO and that's coming. So we called it a micro mission. And now our micro mission was so successful, it is actually going into our overall mission. Because we have to give people, we have to tap into that pride, because to mitigate against the breach of psychological contract, we need to tap into what makes people feel proud to work for the organisations that we work in. What are the success stories? What do we want to be known for? In the public sector, for example, it's about excellence in citizen service. So by tapping into that, that's massive fuel for people to understand why and go on that journey with you.
Amazing. So you're going through an organizational change that's so significant. You're reorienting how you run HR, how you run OD, how you run finance ops, and so forth, because you're seeking to live the dream that you're then selling to your clients.
Yeah.
And by kind of having that part as part of your lived experience, it gives you that kind of authority to talk to your clients about, well, for good and bad, this has been our experience of how we've rolled that out. Amazing. I guess there's also a part in that of a kind of a freedom to fail, that we're going to learn from our mistakes, that we're not going to get everything right. How do leaders need to think about that? And what's the role of OD? Like, how do we coach our leaders? What do we need to coach our leaders through in terms of establishing a safe environment to fail?
This is a brilliant question. So we have this like saying in version 1. I don't know where it started, but it's brilliant. I think it was Enda, one of the guys from AI Native, and he says, "A whisper from the CEO becomes a roar through the practice." And I'm like, wow, that's so true. So if the CEO is whispering about, do you know what, I used AI to do this the other day and I didn't find it was great, but then I went back and I fixed my prompt and actually that was good and I'm finding this is working. That reverberates all through the organisation. So one of the things that we had to do, and again this was comms and communication, is making sure that all of the leaders were sharing their experience, like unashamedly talking about where they're getting it wrong or where they're getting it right. And also, there is another component, there always is when it comes to the leaders, they're so used to being the single source of knowledge, you know, you know that Japanese concept of shuhari, where you learn from the master. And they're used to being the one the team goes to, like your granny with the Britannia encyclopedias, where they have all the knowledge, and then the internet came along, and now we have AI. So knowledge has been democratized. So all of their direct reports now have access to the same information. So they don't need the leader to help them with the knowledge, but they need the leader to help them make sense of what's happening. So there is a fundamental shift to the leader being a shepherd, a horizon scanner, a sense maker, a master data storyteller.
Wow, so it's a fairly broad range of responsibilities, as always with the leader, but the nature of those responsibilities is changing from a kind of a source of knowledge to a source of clarity of direction, clarity of mission, but also exposing their vulnerability in terms of we're getting stuff wrong as leaders, and it's okay to do that. I'm struck by, like, I get it for myself. I fail at something. I learn. I have a new insight. It's developed myself. It happens to us all the time. So on a personal level, it feels intuitively right. And you hear a lot of organizations talking about that, about creating a safe environment in which to fail. Meta, move fast and break things. In Microsoft, we used to talk a lot about the growth mindset from Carol Dweck. This idea of being a kind of a learn-it-all organization rather than a know-it-all organization.
Love that.
But it's very difficult, isn't it, for leaders to actually make that happen. It's fairly rare that we actually see a pat on the back for a failed initiative. What do leaders need to do? Is it just demonstrating that they have their own vulnerabilities and that they fail sometimes as well, or is there more to it than that?
So again, like, this is really interesting. So there's a couple of things that are springing to mind, and when you think of culture, and you guys like live it and breathe this and you support culture, but culture is a series of micro moments. So your organisation culture is everything from your water cooler chat to your comms, to the sentiment, to what you're signposting with learning. That all contributes to your culture. So small little conversations with a leader where they're vulnerable and go, do you know what, I was really scared to use this, but I had to try it. And a great demonstration of this is when we did our L&D approach to this, we created badges. So we had AI Ready Seller, AI Ready Architect for solution architects, giving them a safe sandbox to break things.
Right.
And actually, they're the solution architects. They're supposed to be perfect and know everything. How are they going to actually be allowed to play with it and get it wrong? So that was a brilliant course that we designed. But the one that was the most significant for me was AI Ready HR. And it was the most close to my heart. So spent time with our HR professionals. It's kind of like the cobbler's shoes we're always forgotten about. And I was helping them with being ready and demystifying what AI is, because I'm not a technologist, but I was able to, and they were like, oh, I get it, that makes sense. But the most powerful thing was one of our head of ER said, I'm a solicitor. Like, I have been told not to trust AI. I've been told not to trust AI to write reports. So she's like, I feel like I can't do this. It's doing my homework. I've cheated. So what I said was, are you open to a reframe? And she said, of course, go ahead. And I said, do you have a paralegal or a PA? Absolutely. I've had many over my career. And I said, if you dictated a letter and you said, I want you to email X, Y, and Z, include this, reference that policy or whatever it is. Would you just let the paralegal send it off, or would you check it? She said, well, I check it. And would you send it yourself, or would you be okay with the paralegal sending it? Absolutely. And I said, is that not the same thing with AI? And she was like, God, I never thought about it like that. And I said, so it's your intuition, your lived experience, your knowledge. It's just helping you do more of what you do brilliantly faster. And that was like a light bulb for me and for her. So hopefully,
Yeah.
and she was vulnerable, and the whole room said, yeah, I feel like that too.
And I guess it's no more cheating to use a large language model in your role these days. It is very interesting, because I'll always ask, within a room that I'm working with, how many people are using this capability? And obviously that number has increased dramatically over the last, 3 years now. But there still seems to be this slight sense of kind of embarrassment, or I'm kind of cheating on my homework using this stuff to write this document, to create this email or draft whatever it is, which is kind of crazy. This is a tool that's available to us. It helps us, so we should feel absolutely comfortable with using it. And I guess the other thing you mentioned there is the idea of the paralegal. We need to check things. We need to exercise our own professional judgment. We need to see what has been created. We absolutely need to do that with AI. I had an interesting encounter with a lady, head of HR, on Tuesday down in Shannon Chamber of Commerce, who was running a session, and she was making a point about a tool that she is using, or that they are using in this organization, that helps them with the analysis of interview scripts, to help with the kind of recruitment process. And she made a kind of a throwaway comment, which was, she was basically saying this tool wasn't great. But she was kind of saying, the tool is making this decision, and maybe it was a slip of the tongue, but I picked her up on it and I said, it's extremely important that we don't describe this in terms of the tool made the decision. Just like you said, we need to check the work. We also need to take accountability. AI cannot take accountability. It doesn't know what accountability is, and so we cannot hold it accountable. I don't know if people in the room know about the famous Air Canada case about 1.5 years ago, where someone went on, they had a bereavement in the family, and asked the chatbot on Air Canada's website, I'm under pressure, I need to book a flight, I need to get from Toronto to Vancouver. Can I get on the flight, pay for it now, and you'll give me a refund of half the money afterwards? The answer was no. We need to approve that first and give you a voucher, and then you can book the flight. But the chatbot said, yes, you can. So they've booked the flight, applied for their refund, and Air Canada's defense was, that wasn't us. That wasn't Air Canada. That was our chatbot on our website. And believe it or not, they went to court over this, and not surprisingly, the judge threw the book at them and said, no, that is your capability, you've deployed that. But anyway, it's an example of where, just as your point with the paralegal, we need to be checking this stuff, certainly before it goes out into the public domain.
100%.
Cleo, I wanted to shift a little bit then and talk to you about the whole process of designing jobs and I suppose specifying jobs. And I think back to the start of my career in 1994 in Nortel in Maidenhead in the UK, and the first thing I was handed on day one was my job spec. And that was fantastic because it gave me a level of, I suppose, certainty in terms of what was expected of me, and clarity in terms of what my role was, what responsibilities were what good looked like, and that. However, that's 30 years ago. Is that a tool, and this is not a loaded question, is that a tool that's still fit for purpose in this era? Because things are moving so fast.
So I might ask you, a week later, did the job spec look like the role?
I would say the job spec was no longer accurate the day it was published. So even back then, we do other things,
Yes.
we take on other responsibilities, things evolve. But in this crazy time, things are evolving at such a fast pace that the idea of having a job spec in front of me and using that to get clarity, it just doesn't feel like it's a tool that's fit for purpose anymore.
You're 100% right. And, we had lunch to discuss what we were going to talk about, and we had a brilliant conversation. And one of the things that I was thinking about was, how do we meet this psychological contract by given a bit of a roadmap and given people agency and skin in the game in this. And then I was thinking about, to your point, about the job spec and how that's my identity. Look, all of these things are me. And I felt like that when I got my job spec in version 1, and then a week later, that's what I was laughing at, looked completely different. So one of the things that we've looked at and we implemented is Sophia's skills framework. Now, I'm not selling Sophia, there's multiple ones out there, but we found that that was the best one that fitted our needs.
This is the skills framework in an information age, Sophia.
Absolutely. Yep. So, and it's all about breaking it down into skills, competencies and behaviours. Because if you think about it, like if some parts of the role that are heavily administrative are going to be maybe for better automated, we needed like a Lego box. Like if you imagine like your Lego box, so you could deconstruct and reconstruct skills and roles and behaviours in real time. But we also overlaid that with Coursera, where we were able to say, okay, the skills of negotiation that you're going to need is communication, negotiation, and again, how you would plug those gaps at a more senior level is this. So we needed to maybe introduce the idea of holding the job spec lightly, but also showing them how this captures who you are as a person rather than a static piece of paper. They're intermovable, interconnected and transferable skills into multiple different areas. And also, if you think about the future, we need to move into maybe an internal talent market, and we never quite cracked that. And with the EU Pay Act coming out, that's like a steaming train coming towards us. So every time you go out to market, your salary band from the person who's loyal, who's been with the company, version 1 is 30 years old next year, then it's very hard to catch up. So we want to create an internal talent market. And the way I'd see it, particularly with consultancy and with skills, is that it will move towards project work. So your skills match that project, you're on that 20% of the time, and you might move somewhere else. So it's really meaningful, really purposeful, and tied to your skills. And again, that helps us create this talent ecosystem that we are growing our own talent and identifying people.
So we're still, to a certain extent, kind of specifying the role, if you like, but we're doing so with these Lego bricks that you talk about. We're associating skills and level of skill and competency with the individual rather than with the role. And as we learn, and we're learning, at a much more rapid pace than when I started in my career, as we learn, that is quite a dynamic view of my role, my capabilities, my competencies within the organization. But we're using that then that dynamic view of all the individuals within the organization in what you call the kind of an internal market there to match supply with demand that occurs within the project organization. I guess we're also, by doing that, as we decompose the role, if that's the right term, and break it down into its constituent parts, we're also being given an opportunity to assess, well, which parts of this role can I get AI to help me with?
100%.
Which parts of this role are uniquely human and that I shouldn't dream of giving to AI? And then I suppose there's some sort of hybrid in between where there's particular skills, competencies where I can work with AI. It's a kind of a collaborative assistant in some way, and use it to good effect. Ultimately, to make me a more effective solution architect, project manager, enterprise sales guy, or whatever it is.
Absolutely, and I often think right back to like the 90s. I'm like a 70s baby, but in the 90s. Little boys and little girls in the class, and the teacher says, what do you want to be when you grow up? Now, I have a problem with that because if we live to be a lot longer, we may have multiple careers, but no one put their hand up and said, Miss, I want to be an influencer, I want to be a TikToker, I want to be on YouTube making content, because that job wasn't dreamed of at that time. So probably our next 2 roles ahead hasn't been conceptualized yet because we are moving so fast. But the skills and the behaviours, they're kind of universal and they're fixed, because at the end of the day, communication is communication. So to be an influencer, you need great communication skills. You need to have presence. You need to be able to be adaptable to different audiences and different mediums. You need to be tech savvy. tech savvy, Cleo. So what I'm saying is, even though that wasn't conceptualized, you can rebuild that with your Lego bricks.
Okay, excellent. And I suppose in differentiating, the competencies that I can, I don't know, is outsource the right term, but that I can offload, let's say, to AI, and understand the pieces that are uniquely human. I guess we're creating an opportunity to get in the front foot with AI. We're no longer kind of seeing it as this wave of change that is being done unto me, but rather here's a capability that's providing a huge amount of value, but I'm using a structured way to consider what I can delegate, what I keep for myself, and as I say, what's uniquely human. That I want to dig a little deeper on that, what's uniquely human, because I guess one way of looking at it is this is kind of how we differentiate ourselves from AI. There's a kind of a fear out there of job displacement, etc. But actually, it's in dialing up and getting better at and developing those uniquely human attributes and competencies that we, I suppose, maintain our core value in the organization. That's what kind of differentiates us from AI. What are some of those competencies that are uniquely human that AI will not just not deal with in the short term, but will never deal with?
Yeah.
What are they?
So this I was researching and ideating this question, and actually a piece of data that I found fascinating was the skills that are uniquely human to us that cannot be done by AI is now the fastest growing jobs market in the US at the moment.
So the market is responding to these human skills.
Human skills.
Okay.
And for L&D, HR and OD professionals in the room, instructional design and everybody else, the soft skills, the fluffy skills, the ones that we heard for years, and the leaders used to say to me, oh, here you go again with your fluffy skills. And I said, ignore soft skills, you get hard problems. But that's a different day's conversation. But what I would say is, this is our time to shine, because these are the skills that L&D, OD, we need to double down on with leaders. And that's all about, there's a lovely little acronym which we'll come to in a minute, but even just the top 3 for leaders. So sense making over decision making. And the other one then for me is ethical anchoring. And the last one is creating psychological safety. So there's 3 things. So if you think about ethical anchoring, a day in the life of a leader, some companies right now, some 2 years' time, he comes into the office or she comes into the office or they come into the office, there's a dashboard and it's pinging with all these agents. And it might be saying that this company is right for an M&A or this, that we might need to redesign or restructure here, but something feels off. And the AI isn't in the room, it doesn't walk the corridor, it's not listening to something at the water cooler, hasn't picked up attention in the room, can't see any of that.
You're talking about an innate human sense. This is the gut.
Absolutely. So, and that's pattern recognition, it's intuitive knowledge, and that's where your leaders, your senior leaders, who now will have their time to shine to say, actually, I remember when the internet came out in the 90s and I remember all of that. So this isn't their first rodeo. So they're now in the room and they're saying, there's an indication from the AI based on the material that has that we do this, but something doesn't feel right. So, and that's really interesting because that's the type of stuff that they need to model and talk about and share to their direct reports, so that becomes conversational. The next one is ethical anchoring. Like, are we going to automate everything? When do we need to go slow to go fast? What things shouldn't be automated? Like, I was thinking of performance reviews, like they take a long time, and version 1, like self-flagellation, we have a quarterly cycle. So you've only done your performance review and then it comes back around again. Working on that one. So if you think about that, that's a massive amount of performance reviews, and some organisations do calibration. So you might think, well, we'll just run them through AI. But I heard a brilliant story, and it was a company that did a restructure, and they looked at people that got a performance rating, let's say 5 is the best, and this person was getting a 3, and they thought there's a candidate, and they were let go. All of a sudden they lost customers, the staff weren't happy, and they noticed a massive plummet in the team's efficiency. And when they got under the hood of it, that person was the connective glue of that team. That was the person that everybody came to, and they were like helping everybody else and not helping themselves. So they didn't have loads of stuff to put down because their job was made up of helping people. And they were excellent at customer relationships, and their stakeholders loved them. And AI doesn't know that. It just looks like on paper that's a viable candidate. So that's what I'm saying about the ethical anchoring. And probably the last one is around generating psychological safety. Think back to COVID, no one knew what was going to happen. We're kind of in that space. So it's about, look, I can give you, yeah, we're all in this together. I can give you as much clarity as I have. Here's what I'm seeing. Let's figure it out together. This is what I'm finding works. But let's focus on what are we here to do and how can we make that work for us to get where we want to go faster.
That's great, Cleo. I'm conscious we've only 7 minutes left, believe it or not.
Okay.
So,
sorry, I get really passionate about this.
This is really good. But I wanted to talk to you about, you mentioned an acronym. And
Yes.
we're talking about these kind of unique capabilities. Tell us about that.
So I was doing some research for today, and I found a great article, and it was called The Epoch in the Age of AI, and it was based around the skills that humans have and how do we design roles of the future. And I know we're short of time, so it stands for E is for emotional intelligence or empathy. So that's a core human skill. P is for presence, but presence also encompasses influencing and networking. O is for having an opinion, but that ties into vision, mission, and strategy. And then C is creativity and innovation. And then the last one is H, and H is about hope. And hope is about honesty and transparency and creating psychological safety.
It's a nice framework, and I guess these again are the skills that AI just won't be able to replicate. They're the kind of things that make us uniquely human and that we need to now focus on developing within ourselves.
There's one bit that I forgot to mention.
Sure.
Our brains are phenomenal, that everything I mentioned we can do in real time. So we can move between planning and creativity, we can have a thought, we can envision how that might work, we feel it intuitively. AI can't do that. We've cognitive agility, that AI gets a prompt and it goes off in a direction. You have to prompt it to go look at it from multiple ways, act as this person. But our brain is able to synthesize that in real time and reminding ourselves of our great human strengths and upgrading our hardware.
I love it, and I know that's a subject very close to your heart, so close to your heart, in fact, that am I right in saying you have a PhD application in to major on exactly that topic?
So it's with my supervisor at the moment for review, so fingers crossed. And I'm really happy that Digital SkillNet, Moira and Sheila are supporting me, because it's about the future work in the age of AI, and it's looking at intuition and human skills, upgrading our hardware to mitigate the decline in critical thinking.
I love it. Upgrading our hardware, using the gut for intuition, using the heart for that kind of EQ aspect in this new age to supplement and enhance our intellectual skills from our brain. Amazing.
So if you think about it, our body speaks to our brain. 80% of the communication goes to our brain. And so our brain is listening 80% of the time to our body. Our heart speaks more to the brain than any other organ. And the brain then 20% of the time sends signals the other way. But since Descartes said, I think, therefore I am, we've been absolutely obsessed with the brain. And we've forgotten about our unused intelligence, which is heart known and our gut. And our bodies know before it comes to consciousness anything between 2 and 12 seconds. So we have an emotion, our brain makes sense of it. A lot of the time when we're looking at AI slop is the new buzzword, we're looking at something, it looks beautiful. It's magical how it appears and it looks so great. So we go into system one thinking, Daniel Kahneman's, and we just switch off and we just say, it looks fine, but the body knows. And what I want to do is prove that if we can teach leaders to interrupt the broadcast, stop for a minute, my heartbeat is up, I'm actually feeling something wrong here, and then interrogate the data. Because otherwise our brains are so fallible to just looking at it, and it seems like an authority, and it's not our fault. It's how we're programmed. It's our physiology. But let's use the other part of our body too.
Well, I can't wait to see that piece of research.
Hopefully it gets approved.
Hopefully it does get approved and read more about that. But I guess a role for organisational development in understanding those kinds of capabilities and helping, as you say, coach our leaders to understand that more. As we move towards the conclusion, Cleo, I wanted to talk to you just about, we've talked about what's shifting for leaders, how we think about managing change and develop that muscle around managing organisational change. We've talked about designing jobs differently, the evolution of the job spec, and we've talked about epoch and other parts of that model in terms of what truly differentiates us from AI and some of the skills and competencies that we need to be dialing up. What does all this look like in practice, though? Can you give us a perspective as a practitioner who's been right in the centre of this? Where do we start?
It's a great question. So first thing, get clear on your why. Communicate, why are we using this? Is it because it's a shiny new tool? Because there'll be a new tool out every week. Sometimes it's not AI, sometimes it's automation. So figure out what is it that we're here to do? Why is it that we're not getting to do more of it? And go after the bottlenecks and make sure everybody is clear on how to do it. The next thing is AI fundamentals training. It's actually mandated now with the EU AI Act. We've, on my LinkedIn, we're offering a couple of people, we're testing, the one that Alison built, for customers to help them with building AI literacy. But there's lots of other free ones out there. Then it's about coaching your leaders and making sure that the leaders are creating psychological safety. There's never been a more exciting time to be in organisational development. We're not a support act. We are at the driving force of this, and we can help the organisation by being wayfinders, horizon scanners, and give them a roadmap. The other thing then is HR. All my HR colleagues, why did I join HR? Because the human part of HR, I want to help people. So again, we are now at the leadership table because they can't do it without us. And lastly then, L&D and instructional design. People need help with adoption, but we have to meet them where we're at, and we need to design from an enterprise perspective, but also in specialisms. And all the brilliant ideas I heard earlier about Gen Z and bite-sized chunks. And actually, we're really lucky because WorkJuggle look after our early careers. So that piece of research about Gen Z was absolutely fantastic. So we're really lucky to have that. So that's it.
Wow, what a great place to finish up and to say, L&D, OD, HR. It has never been a more exciting time to be in these functions as those functions.
And terrifying.
And terrifying. Yeah. As those functions support the broader organisation in this journey. Cleo, let me just wrap up by saying this. As I work with industries, different clients across Europe and beyond, one question that I'm constantly getting asked is, where's all this heading? Where are we headed for? And my answer, I was talking to someone about this last night, my answer is I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not sure. It depends on the research that you read. We're either heading for Armageddon or Nirvana. I guess the answer is going to land somewhere halfway in between. But what you've provided for us today, I think, is agency. The opportunity for OD, for HR, for L&D to create an organisation that learns faster than the technology develops and that uses AI in the context of human capabilities that are not competing with AI, but are rather augmenting it. I think that's fantastic. Cleo McCormack, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody. Thank you, Patrick.